Okay. No, I'm starting this much later than I usually do on Saturdays. Other things going on. I did run a live stream all night last night to see if I could get suggestions of stuff. I wanted this to be topical. I'll just bore you with reading patriotic speeches. Got to read the Declaration of Independence for this day. But in watching my videos this week, you saw that, or I indicated the significant adoption of the Declaration of Independence spells out the principles of democracy here and everywhere. So I thought that would be something we could read. I could just kind of do that, other patriotic speeches and so forth, and see how you guys were doing. Share some ideas. Share some. There's some films I always would put out in my suggestion drive that you are good to watch on 4th of July. This is another reason why I started late, is that I had some things that have been going on with the holiday, and also I got bad news about theater and so forth. That's my big thing, as you know, with my channel and theater that I really, really, really love. Many of my uploads have been shows that I've done there. It's like my Home Away from Home that they're closing because they lost they can't pay the rent as long as they're closed because of COVID, and that's just very, very depressing to me. But I'm trying to stay on a happy note with this and not have this be a downer, and celebrate our freedom and so forth. Anyway, let's go ahead and get the background music started from the other video I put out. Anybody here with us? I'm wondering who that was, since I didn't see anybody here. Anyway, I'll just mention, there's of course, there's the Patriot with Mel Gibson, with James Cagney, Oscar winning performance, Yankee Doodle Dandy, a lot of patriotic music in that. Came out right during World War II, and it's kind of a film for inspiration. It came out, the inspiration to beat the Nazis and so forth was inherent in that, even though it wasn't specifically referenced in that film. That was clearly in the background of everyone's thoughts when they watched that film. It was originally, so Yankee Doodle Dandy is a good film for today. And there was also the musical theater I did a number with some of my friends, 1776. That's a fun film to watch. If you type it in, I know there's some people that have uploaded clips from that. There's also Gettysburg. You don't think about it as 4th of July, but the Battle of Gettysburg came to end on July 3rd. And then the next day, the 4th of July, was the surrender of Vicksburg, two major turning points in the victory in the Civil War. And one of the history pages where I uploaded that 2nd of July thing, somebody mentioned, that's another significance of this 4th of July weekend, the new birth of freedom, connected with 407 years later. Where 4th of July was also a significant event in that, when you consider the turning points of the war coming 4th of July. So I also stirring speech from the movie Gettysburg, where if nobody interrupts me and steps in and says there's anything like, I'll just keep the screen going and read some of those stirring speeches and so forth. I definitely do Declaration of Independence, do Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, Second Inaugural Address, very powerful, and Colonel Chamberlain's address to the soldiers and beginning of the 1983 film Gettysburg. I'm going to step out to do some lemonade or stuff today. People that were in my live stream a couple weeks ago mentioned how hot it was, and Kenzie, for example, said that it was last week and Kenzie goes around but pretty hot now even here in Southern California. So I'm going to get some more lemonade and maybe more people will be with us to step out. But Stars and Stripes Forever keep going in the background. And anyway, I'll be back in a minute and I'll start with livening up the live stream with some patriotic speeches and declarations. Still nobody here? Yeah, maybe that's a good thing. Hopefully you're all out enjoying barbecues and stuff. The thing I'm playing is from the track I uploaded. I uploaded it come up this morning. If you wanted to put that on in the background of your barbecue or whatever you're doing, hope people are still able to enjoy this despite COVID, but they're not having the same bad news about something that's as important in their life as theaters maybe being canceled due to COVID. But hope you're enjoying the holiday and just because and also I'll type it in here so when somebody shows up. I'm taking requests. If anybody else wants to shout out movies that are good for or they want to shout out a request for a change in the patriotic music for the background, or a request for something else that I can read, go for it. The Declaration of Independence. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, a decent respect for the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, but whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, It is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles, and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to redress them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation, till his assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people will relinquish the right of representation in legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly, for opposing with many firmness his invasions of the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time, whereby the legislative powers incapable of annihilation have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our government, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy, scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections among us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpments. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace friends. We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do in the name and authority of the good people of these colonies solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that, as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. If anybody's doing this, but please watch it later and then you can enjoy it. You just sit back and maybe more people will join us and read some more about declaration, what was left behind. It took 87 years, and then the new Birth of Freedom that extends those principles on a much broader scale. And think about the relevance of many of those words that we just put together.
Voiceover on.
I'll go ahead and put this down here that I'm taking requests. Still nobody here? Well, I guess that's what happens for going off schedule, but the holiday is kind of that only happens once a year, so you never know. What I'll keep doing is I'll keep just, these people just watch it later. Enjoy it. And nobody's with us, so second I have to take a break. And this is significant during the battle of the Battle of Gettysburg. This is obviously it's not an exact speak. It's out of the film, so we don't know how accurate it is. But it's something that could have been said by one of the officers to soldiers before the big battle, any of the big battles in the Civil War, about the significance. But, Colonel Chamberlain in the 1993 film Gettysburg, one that's well worth seeing today for the occasion. We're moving out in a few minutes. We'll be moving all day. I've been ordered to take you men with me. I'm told that if you don't come, I can shoot you. Well, I won't do that. Maybe somebody else will, but I won't. So that's that. Here's the situation. The whole Reb army is up that road a ways waiting for us. So this is no time for an argument like this. I tell you, we could surely use you fellows. We're now well below half strength. Whether you fight or not, that's up to you. Whether you come along is well, your company. You know who we are, what we're doing here. But if you're going to fight alongside us, there are a few things I want you to know. This regiment was formed last summer in Maine. There were 1,000 of us then, or less than 300 of us now. All of us volunteered to fight for the Union, just as you did. Some came mainly because we were bored at home, thought this looked like it might be fun. Some came because we were ashamed not to. Many of us came because it was the right thing to do. And all of us have seen men die. This is a different kind of army. If you look back through history, you'll see men fighting for pay, for women, for some other kind of loot. They fight for land, power, because a king leads them, or I guess because they like killing. But we are here for something new. This has not happened much in the history of the world. We are an army out to set other men free. America should be free ground, all of it, not divided by a line between slave state and free, all the way from here to the Pacific Ocean. No man has to bow. No man born to royalty. Here we judge you by what you do, not by who your father was. Here you can be something. Here is the place to build a home. But it's not the land. There's always more land. It's the idea that we all have value. You and me. What we're fighting for in the end. We're fighting for each other. Sorry, I didn't mean to preach. You go ahead. You talk a while. If you choose to join us, you want your muskets back, you can have them. Nothing more will be said by anybody anywhere. If you choose not to join us, well, you can come along under guard, and when this is all over, I will do what I can to see you fair treatment. But for now, we're moving out. Gentlemen, I think if we lose this fight, we lose the war. So if you choose to join us, I'm personally very grateful. A little good monologue for actors to use too. So appropriate for the occasion. Anyway, so disappointing no one's here to enjoy this, but maybe they'll see it when cut about the long pauses and just get back to it later on, but we'll see how this goes. I'll keep reading one patriotic speech for the occasion and then taking a break, stepping out, with the be right back sign, and hopefully when I come back, more people will join us, and we'll edit the video after it's posted to be just the speakers and the crowd and the boring pauses waiting to see if anyone joins. Hey, Ziga, happy 4th of July. Are you still here? Sorry, I missed you. If you left, didn't think anybody was going to join us. But thank you for giving me my second thumbs up. I appreciate that, even if you're not still with us. But anyway, I left off reading that pep talk to the soldiers before the Battle of Gettysburg and all the aftermath. Let's do Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that this nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggle here, have consecrated it far above our power to add or detract. The world will little know, nor long remember what we say here. Yeah, that they did here. It is for us, the living rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work, which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead, we take increased devotion to that cause for which they have here gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Maybe today is also a good day to think about that unfinished work that Lincoln spoke of. It's always an unfinished work. Democracy is always a work in progress. And we have to fight for it. And I believe it was Jefferson again. The price of freedom is eternal vigilance. I believe that was Jefferson that said that one. We need to be constantly aware of that, lest government of the people, by the people, for the people will perish from the earth. certainly imperiled from the earth right now, but will it perish forever? That is in our hands. And I'm hoping we will all continue to stay focused on that fact. Never lose sight of it. Eternal vigilance, as the founding fathers saw it. We must never cease to fight and carrying it forward ourselves. And then they'll finish on after the war has come to conclusion. Lincoln's second inaugural, one of his last speeches, and I believe his finest speech ever. Lincoln's second inaugural. Fellow countrymen, at this second appearing to take the oath of the presidential office, there is less occasion for an extended address than there was at the first. Then a statement, somewhat in detail, of a course to be pursued, seemed fitting and proper. Now, at the expiration of 4 years, during which public declarations have been constantly called forth on every point and phase of the great contest, which still absorbs the attention and engrosses the energies of the nation, little that is new could be presented. The progress of our arms, upon which all else chiefly depends, is as well known to the public as to myself, and it is, I trust, reasonably satisfactory and encouraging to all. With high hope for the future, no prediction in regard to it is ventured. On the occasion corresponding to this 4 years ago, all thoughts were anxiously directed to an impending civil war. All dreaded it, all sought to avert it. While the inaugural address was being delivered from this place, devoted altogether to saving the Union without war, insurgent agents were in the city seeking to destroy it without war, seeking to dissolve the Union and divide effects by negotiation. Both parties deprecated war, but one of them would make war rather than let the nation survive, and the other would accept came 1/8 of the whole population colored slaves, not distributed generally over the Union, but localized in the southern part of it. These slaves constituted a peculiar and powerful interest. All knew that this interest was somehow the cause of the war. To strengthen, perpetuate, and extend this interest was the object for which the insurgents would rend the Union, even by war, while the government claimed no right to do more than to restrict the territorial enlargement of it. Neither party expected for the war the magnitude or the duration which it has already attained. Neither anticipated that the cause of the conflict might cease with, or even before the conflict itself should cease. Each looked for an easier triumph and a result less fundamental and astounding. Both read the same Bible and pray to the same God, and each invokes his aid against the other. It may seem strange that any men should dare to ask a just God's assistance in wringing their bread from the sweat of other men's faces, but let us judge not, that we be not judged. The prayers of both could not be answered. That of neither has been answered fully. The Almighty has his own purposes. Woe unto the world because of offenses, for it must needs be that offenses come, but woe to that man by whom the offense cometh. If we shall suppose that American slavery is one of those offenses which, in the providence of God, must needs come, but which having continued through his appointed time, he now wills to remove, and that he gives both North and South this terrible war, as the woe due to those by whom the offense came, shall we discern therein any departure from those divine attributes which the believers in a living God always ascribe to him? Fondly do we hope, fervently do we pray that this mighty scourge of war may speedily pass away. Yet if God wills it, that it continue until all the wealth piled by the bondman's 250 years of unrequited toil shall be sunk, and until every drop of blood drawn with the lash shall be paid by another drawn with the sword. As was said 3,000 years ago, so still it must be said. The judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether, with malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right. Let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and a lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations. Pray. So relevant today. Step out once more, continue to see if anybody wants to make suggestions and something else they'd like to hear read. If not, when I come back, I'll go back to the declaration. We should close with that one more time, and then we'll close it out, unless other people have come in and made requests of their own. Lindsay Craig Michaels, are you still with us? I'm just really in a down mood. I'm trying to be in the optimistic mood with all the stuff I'm reading, this everything, but just things are not. Let's see if anybody else. I don't think I will. Just keep it straight. I'm not bring everyone else down, but I hope my good moments to be remembered from this live stream. And I'm not going to go back and use the video whatever and edit it just down to that, so this can be a good thing to watch just for those positive points. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up of what this. I'm just it's in a bad time. That one thing this also really taught me is to stick to my schedule of going on around noon. But just things came up at the holiday. I will try to get better starting next weekend. I hope I haven't lost all my regulars. I'll probably post something in the community tab about holidays. I think it's going at noon I usually do. Saying that I hope people will continue joining us when I get back with regular structure. So thank you to people that do sign in and give me the thumbs up, and hope you enjoy the readings of the great speeches later on. And I'll see you guys around. Take care.